right. A few figures from the book. Even as I was reading the argument, these figures, it takes a while to adjust. Again, it's because an American, our notion of what's taking place in Europe lags, I think. But I found every one of these things shocking. By 2015, I'm taking these from your book. By 2015, more British Muslims were fighting for ISIS than for the British Armed Forces. Yeah. By 2016, the most popular boy's name in England and Wales, Mohammed. By the middle of this century, this is a projection, by the middle of this century, a majority of Austrians under the age of 15 will be Muslim. And it is single-digit numbers of years ago that every one of those was unthinkable. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I smile because, I mean, I find it...
You're used to it.
I find it, if I didn't laugh, I'd cry. I've done the crying. I mean, the point about this is that, again, all of these things you're meant to not notice. You're meant to not say it either. You're meant to say, yeah, okay, so Muhammad happens to be the most popular boy. What are you saying, bigot?
Right.
What's wrong with that?
Right.
Or they find ways around it. They say, no, it's just that we counted the Harrys in a different way that year, and so on. All of these things, there has been an enormous cost that people have been made to pay if they observe what's in front of their eyes. And so we get used to this sort of just period of lying.
Right.
And that's what we've been in.
What is the Orwell? It takes a great effort to see what is under one's nose.
Right.
All right, second concatenation. Again, I'm quoting you, Douglas. At the same time that we've had this influx, at the same time, Europe has lost faith in its beliefs, traditions, and legitimacy. Europe is now deeply weighed down with guilt for the past. And there is also the problem of an existential tiredness.
Yes.
And a feeling that perhaps for Europe, the story has run out and a new story must be allowed to begin. Okay, take us through that a little. Now, the German war guilt, that's clear. Britain seems to me to be a gift. So again, I'm speaking as an American. What was the Churchill movie that was just a big hit last year? We think of Britain. Britain has no apologies to make, no reason to feel guilty. Neil Ferguson, other people who've looked at the British colonies, on balance, it's a transfer of human capital.
Right.
They're not impoverishing the people of India. On the contrary.
Right.
And so why would you include Britain? Britain's the hard case to understand why Britain should feel guilty.
Yes.
Or an existential fatigue.
There's several things. One is the phenomenon that if you or I were to sum up all people across, say, Asia as having responsibility for the same thing, people would say,
Madness.
That's mad. I mean, you're not even picking out the important distinctions. You're being very generalizing.
Right.
But you can do that with Europe. So you can say, we did the Holocaust in Europe. You can even get away with that in London. Sorry, we. And then you take the other one, post-colonialism, which you refer to. Post-colonialism and post-colonial guilt is suffered in almost equal measure by, for instance, Britain, which undoubtedly ran quite a lot of the world in the past, and Sweden, which did not. So there's a strange thing that has emerged, which I try to explain in the book, where we end up summing up ourselves by our collectively worst moments. The flip side of that is we look at everyone else only by their best. So recent years, for instance, we've heard an awful lot, certainly since 9/11, about the Islamic Neoplatonists. No one talked very much about the Islamic Neoplatonists until this last 20 years. But the Islamic world is best represented by the Islamic Neoplatonists, whereas Europe is best represented by Auschwitz. Well, here you get to one of the problems of this, is that we are...
That's just uninformed.
Yeah, of course it's uninformed. All of it's uninformed, and it's also imbibed by vast swathes of the public and told to them by a huge amount of academics, media, politicians, and others. There's several reasons for that, isn't there? One is that you can do that almost cost-free as a modern politician, can't you? It's like the endless apologies for historical acts. It can gain you something, but it costs you nothing. All you're doing is selling out and misrepresenting the past. But you yourself might be able to polish a bit of your halo or burnish your reputation in some way. But this is just one element of this. This thing I describe as the sense of story running out. A couple of people have said, and I'm very glad they've pointed this out, that in some ways it's the most original part of the argument of my book. The immigration bit is important, and people should know about it. But
so this guilt-ridden complex that Douglas is talking about, that is being felt by the British, in which all of Europe's problems, all of Europe's, let's just say, the things that, are associated with European values, the good and the bad, and especially the bad. Whatever you want to talk about the past mistakes, somehow Britain gets basically, sucked into it. And so all of Europe's mistakes, all of Europe's past tragedies, somehow these are now perpetuated within England and in Great Britain, and is being talked about by who? It's a change in the history. It's a change in the story. So, for example, if you were going to say something, Europe is going to be marred by the tragedy of all the concentration camps, Auschwitz, as Douglas talks about. Well, how does England get dragged into that? What did England have to do with the Jewish extermination that was being committed by the Nazis? Nothing at all. But they're dragged into it, just like with everything else, slavery, post-colonialism, everything. And this is what's being taught. This is what's being reported by the liberals, by the progressives, by the media, a rewrite of British history, of European history, making England that colonialism, that was terrible. Imperialism, terrible. It had absolutely no good whatsoever. It just completely decimated the entire world. You can have an argument on that, that's perfectly fine, but to rewrite history in terms of where England is to blame for all of the ills of the world, that's exactly what's being taught to the young people. And they're drinking it up, they're lapping it up, because that's what's being told. It's the same thing that happened in the United States of America for those of our British counterparts across the pond. America owned slaves. No, America did not own slaves. The South owned slaves. The North didn't. The South wanted slavery. The North didn't. The Democratic Party was a party of slavery. The Republican Party, post-Abraham Lincoln, was a party that wanted to free the slaves. A Republican president wanted to free the slaves. That's why they went to war. And when they went to war, half of the country went to war to try to keep slaves. The northern part wanted to free the slaves. Hundreds of thousands of people died. Why? Some of those people wanted to keep slaves. The other people that died they wanted to free the slaves. But history is written as if slavery was the only slave trade that occurred was the Atlantic slave trade, and America was at the top of it, which is not even freaking close. They don't talk about the Slav trade. They don't talk about the Barbary pirates. They don't talk about the Islamic trade slaves. I mean, this is unbelievable, folks. But this is what Douglas is trying to get to the heart of the matter, that unfortunately, there's such a huge force to be fought against, because
did the Harvard Stem Cell Institute just find a way to restore crystal clear 20/20 vision without glasses, contacts, or
they're the ones that are trying to rewrite and reshape history to make it look like as if Europe, Great Britain, the United States of America, all these countries were formed because of the ill that they committed, the evil acts that they committed in terms of the past. Anyways, we're going to get to more of Douglas with Peter Robinson, and we're going to do that. But before we do, just want to let you know you're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir, where I give you my political prescription from my political perspective. What happens when you get culture and religion and science and entertainment and social media and everything else just comes crashing together. Let's get back to more of the interview with Douglas and Peter Robinson right now.
the us bit. What is it about us that would mean this all happened? Not many people have, I think, written about. And by the way, I'm very disturbed about this because almost none of my critics, and there are some sadly, but almost none of them pick up on this thing. Almost none of them. They go for me over the immigration,
Right.
but they never pick up on this. I have not to date had one critic who said, you're wrong on the existential tiredness. You're wrong on that. Our best days are all ahead of us, or any of that. I don't get any of that. And that's a disappointment because I was rather hoping I would.
Well, all right, so let's take a moment. Help me think it through, layman that I am, that I haven't thought about this in any great detail. So what's the parallel? What's the parallel? I don't know, 5th century Rome, collapse of civilizational self-confidence. Of course they could have kept the barbarians out of the city, but they permitted the city to be sacked for reasons that don't make any sense all these years later. And we get the same, you can see why Europe would have felt that the First World War was a catastrophe. Second World War is in some ways a reparation. And in all the years since the Second World War, the Germans have made this concerted effort to build a good society.
Right.
There's been economic recovery of all kinds. And instead of feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment, it's just exhaustion.
Well,
why? Why?
The why is this. Almost everything is still behind crime scene tape. You mentioned World War I,
Yes.
borders, okay? I was in the Middle East again recently. In the Middle East, most countries recognize borders to be a prerequisite for peace. If you don't have borders, you're in trouble. Europe thinks that borders are the cause of war. Okay, so that's just the beginning of geography problems.
Right.
Move on. We had wars of religion before we had the wars of nation states. Some people forget that now, but it means that religion also is to a great extent behind crime scene tape. In the 20th century, it was Europe that came up with the two twin nightmares of fascism and communism. So we're very distrustful of not just politics and political ideas, but the philosophy and possibilities that might lead to them. So it leaves you in this position where absolutely everything is still a crime scene, and you're trying to work out how it happened. And that's why whenever anyone mentions something like borders, Angela Merkel and everybody else in any position of power hears, but the strong borders would be a reason we go to war again. That's what we did then. Ideas. This is why this is a terrible thing to say for some philosopher friends, but European ideas, to a great extent of philosophy, has become a game. I'm not saying it hasn't in America as well. It's a sort of hermeneutical game. You can look at the game, but you can't play it because you daren't, because you know what you might go back to. I describe in the book, I had a sort of just terrible moment of realization about this some years ago at a conference at Heidelberg. And I just realized every single idea was off the table. Not only the ideas, the words. You couldn't say culture. I was almost meltdown when I did. You can't use anything because everything might make us do it all again. Well, it's not surprising in that situation that people would have a sense of weariness.
Is that something behind, again, you're having to explain all this to an American, but is there some connection between that and the drive toward a European Union?
Oh, yeah.
That somehow or other we can escape our past by reinventing, we can dissolve our identity, we can dissolve our historical identity, we can wash away our historical guilt in this new entity.
There is that. There's also, by the way, I was in Berlin again the other week and a German audience member pointed this out to me, that there is also the thing, even in this stage, the Germans want to lead the way. They just want to lead the way in masochism, and more. But that the German instinct to dominate, even in the new era, is obviously still there. And also the European Union provides something to do. I was having this debate a little while ago with the former Polish foreign minister who said, yes, we've got to keep moving. The EU has to keep moving. It's got to have purpose. It's endlessly onwards and onwards. And my view as a skeptic of that particular project is, how about that it moves until the point at which you lose the public, for instance? How about that? But that's, of course, that's a mad xenophobic British view, of course.
All right, you have a new...
Again, Douglas tries to bring out the fact that any time you try to bring about British sovereignty, British history, British heart, art, entertainment, British structure, British society, whatever happened in the past, the good that Britain did in World War II, standing up to the Nazis, standing up to Hitler. Literally, at that time when, if Britain hadn't stood up, if Britain hadn't put their best pitcher into the game, Winston Churchill, and for 6, 7, 8 innings, I'm using a baseball analogy here because I don't know how to use it with the cricket one for our British counterparts across the pond. But guess what? They withstood it. He was there for 6 or 7 innings. And yes, America came in with the relief pitcher. They came in with the save. But if it wasn't Britain holding it down in the very beginning, guess what? This YouTube video right now, I'd be speaking German to you guys. That's exactly, but you know what? They don't get credit for it. You bring that up, just wash it away. That has nothing to do with anything. Look how racist Europe is. Look how racist Britain is. You guys are bigots. You guys don't like immigration. You don't like the changing society. You don't like religion. You don't like this. You don't like that. That's what's happening. The same thing they're trying to do here in the United States of America. Rewrite history. Get rid of the Constitution. It's not a living, breathing document. We need to have a new Constitution. We need a new Bill of Rights. We need everything new. Just start all over again. And let's have everybody's, perspective put into a document. That's what's going on here, folks. They want to destroy British history completely. If I bet you, and I'm willing to bet the same thing in the United States of America, if academics, college, university professors, the mainstream media, the historians, if they could find a way to wipe out America's good and just continue to highlight America's, low points, they're doing that already. They're indoctrinating our kids in universities, they're at colleges. They're starting, even at as young as in middle school, kindergarten even. Look at what's going on culturally, how things are changing. And the same thing is happening in Britain as well and across Europe too, folks. And all Douglas is trying to do is opens people's eyes to it and let them make the decisions after that. But at least he's giving them a little bit of a viewpoint and basically saying, hey, take a look at this. Look around. See what's going on. Yes, things are changing, but do you think they're changing for the good? Are we moving forward? Backward? Are we staying still? What's happening? All we're doing is asking questions. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir, and if you haven't done so already, hope we've earned your subscription. Subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. You know what to do. Check out our links above and below to other videos that we have. And I'll leave you with my final thought, which is always, when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.